Hey everyone. So today we're going to have another tutorial around the OMI documentation. In this tutorial, we're going to see how we can create an external or integration app as part of the OMI apps ecosystem. As a bit of a context, developers can create apps for OMI, and there are two types of apps. One is prompt-based apps, which basically allows you to change the prompt that we use to process data, um, data from memories or data from the chat, and basically create new functionality or extract new information um, based on this prompt. But a different type of app, which is an integration app, which is the one we're going to see how to set up today, is slightly more complicated. It's a bit more complicated, where not only changing the prompt, we are actually going to have our own backend, and we can also have our own user interface, where um, OMI will send data to us as developers, and we can store it, present it, do whatever with this data. And this allows us much more flexibility because we can do whatever. Um, there are two types of data that OMI currently supports to send out. Basically, things that OMI can send to your own system, to your own server. One of them is memory. Whenever OMI creates memories, and the other one is the real-time transcriptions. So we can actually get access to live transcription from a variable as well. In this tutorial, we're going to see how we can use and leverage the memory creation trigger. Uh, so OMI will send us any new memory that from a user that installed our app, and then we can literally do whatever. We can display it in a new user interface. We can send it to more downstream processing and whatnot. Um, yeah. So basically, the way the integration app works is with something called a webhook. A webhook is very simple, actually. It's a simple API. A webhook is the exact same thing as an API. It is just being used slightly differently. So traditionally, with API, you as an app developer, what you would do, you will, let's say OMI has an API, you will just query the API. Hey, give me all the memories of this user, and then the API will return you the data. This is a very proactive on the side of the developer. You need to query the API. A webhook is the same thing, but the other way around. Meaning, instead of you asking the OMI backend, "Hey, give me all of the memories," OMI will tell you whenever there is a new memory created. Basically, you tell OMI, "Hey, whenever there is a memory created, this is a link. This is my server. Let me know. Notify me." So you are the API, and OMI lets you know whenever something happens. Basically, we will need to create an API endpoint where we will need to be able to get. So this is your endpoint, which we will create. It will need to be a post endpoint, and we will need to be able to get the user ID in the query parameters, and this kind of like dictionary in the body. We're going to create a simple Python FastAPI API, and we're going to deploy it on an AWS EC2 instance, which is a virtual machine. You can deploy it literally anywhere. You can deploy it on AWS, Azure. You can even run it locally. The only important part is that the API need to be accessible on the internet, because we need to let OMI servers, OMI backend, know how to reach out to your servers to notify you when a new memory was created. So let's start. So we have this simple file. It is 59 lines of code. More than half of them is just documentation. So it's basically only this is the code. We create a new FastAPI instance. This is a lot of it's not so secure. Basically, we tell it to ignore some security stuff. Don't do this in production. We just do it the purpose of understanding how the system works. Yeah, but in our API, we basically have one endpoint. We have a post endpoint. It is called slash webhook, and we're going to get the memory, which is the dictionary that we talked about before, and the user ID, which is a string. If you remember, this is the dictionary and this is the string. And then we're going to print it and return a message. We got it, and then just run it. Again, this is a very simple API. But once you have the data from OMI, once OMI triggered this webhook, you can store this data in a database. You can send it to more processing. You can literally do whatever you want, because this is now your code, your backend. You can do whatever you want. So to run it, we basically need to have someone somewhere in the cloud to run it. I chose AWS EC2 because I don't know I'm used to. I have an instance. This is extra large, but you can literally get this the one for free, the tiniest one. It should work as well. It is in Ubuntu. I have a public IP, and I have security rules to make sure you can actually SSH to it, so I can access it from my terminal, and also HTTP, so the API can work in the security rules. All right, let's connect to the instance. Connect. I'm already connected, but let's do it anyway. Exit. Connected. So I'm back in. So I was in my computer for a moment, and then I connected via an SSH as well. Again, you don't have to follow the exact same thing. You can deploy this server elsewhere. So, for example, I think if I go to my, so I can just run the test. Okay, 1 second. Anyway, I can just run it locally as a regular FastAPI, but the thing is, it will run locally and it won't be accessible anywhere. Okay, so now we need to create a new API, Vim API 2, because I created the file already. I'm just going to copy this stuff and I'm going to save it. And now we need to install some requirements. So let's install Python 3, install. Yeah. So FastAPI, in the new Python stuff, they created this check that makes sure you don't break your main Python interpreter, which I hate. Just add this flag to install it across your entire system. So install the FastAPI. Let's install Unicorn. Sorry, let's install. Cool. And then you will also need to install something called Nginx. Nginx is basically what allow you to convert this API from running locally. It creates a proxy from your local instance to the rest of the world. So let's install that. I think I already have this installed, which is fine. We will run the API in a second. We still need to. Okay. So here, this is the thing I created already before. The only thing you need to change here to align with whatever you are doing is the IP. So this needs to be your IP, which in the case of AWS, you should be able to see it here. Cool. Save this file. Okay, we save this file, and then we need to enable this Nginx. I'm going to send you all of those commands for sure. Again, I created it like a few minutes ago, so it tells me it exists already, which is fine. And then just restart the Nginx service. Cool. Basically, what it is doing, it creates a proxy to the internet, in HTTP. HTTP is port 80 with your IP, and the proxy is to the local instance that we are running, which is this local host in port 8000, which will be this one. Oh, no, no, which will be this one. Cool. After we have all of that set up, we need to run the API. So we run the API, and we have the API running. Just to make sure it is actually running and we can access it from the internet, we're going to make a small HTTP request. We can use something called Insomnia, which is an HTTP client, just HTTP, the IP, and then slash webhook. We're going to trigger this. It needs to be a post. Cool. We get an error back. It basically tells us that we are missing some required stuff, which is true. We need to add the UID and also the body stuff. Also, if you try to do a get, it will fail. Method not allowed. So we know it works. And we also can see the logs here. This is the logs of the request we just made. But anyway, now it works. Okay, now what we need to do, we basically have our API, our backend. It is up and running. We can access it through the internet, which is good. Right now, it's a bit boring. You're just returning a message and printing the memory when it's successful. But again, this is the point of this tutorial is just to show you how to set this up, and then you can take it and do literally whatever you want. The last stage we have, the last step, is to make sure OMI, we have an app in OMI that knows about the webhook. So we're going to go to apps, and we're going all the way up, and we're going to create and submit a new app. We're going to give it a name, Adam Test. You can choose whatever, financial category, it doesn't matter. Description, blah blah blah, bala bala. Okay. And we want the app capability to be an external integration here at the top, so we can actually have the app specific details. Let's choose the memory creation trigger. We don't have auth URL, we only have a webhook. Let's paste our webhook URL, allow paste. So this is the API URL that we have. You can obviously add setup instructions, setup URL after completion. Okay, and then submit app. I need to add the logo, which is okay. I have a logo now. And then submit app again. Confirm. Cool. And now we should be able to. Where is it? Now we need to find it. 1 second. Okay, Atom test. We install it. Install app. Cool. It is installed. And I think now if a new memory has been created, confirm, it should create a new memory. And then we should see a webhook here any second now. Okay, it is still processing. Anyway, whenever OMI is finished the processing, we should see the data. Here we go. So now a few memories were created, I think. We got a few of them. Here's all the text that I was chatting about. Here is another one. Blah 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 blah. It's all good. Yeah, it works. So now, yeah, that's it. Now we have our API up and running. we got the events from Omi, and we can store it on our backend. We can literally do whatever now that you have access to that. Another thing is that you also have, I won't go over it now, but you also have the live transcription. So you can actually get the streaming of me speaking through the wearable, like ongoing. New word, new word, new word, new word to your backend, and do your own things with that. Um, and lastly, if you want, there is a much more complete example in Omi plugins example, um, which is again more comprehensive API. In this one, you will have a Notion CRM. It will create. It will add stuff to your Notion through this API. News checker based on the live transcription. So you have really cool stuff there. All of it is based on the same thing. It is a fast API deployed somewhere, which you can then put the API into Omi's app, like we saw, and it just works. Cool. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have questions, let me know or let Nick know. And yeah, looking forward to do another tutorial.